Singing songs around the campfire and playing Capture the Flag might seem a cherished childhood memory to many. But when it comes to the youth organizations in Germany and USSR during the Second World War, there was definitely less kumbaya. This is On Your Homefront, a sub-series of World War II in real time. I'm Anna Deinhard. During the 19th century, several things in Western society changed the ideals of youth culture, at least from adults' perspective. Among these phenomena are modern patriotism, uniform militarism, the rise of nature conservation, the invention of contemporary sport, outdoor leisure, activities, and physical education. In 1907, these come together into a movement when Robert Baden-Powell, a lieutenant general in the British Army, starts off the Scout movement for boys in Great Britain. In 1910, it formalizes into an organization, and the same year, the first Girl Scouts emerge and form the Guide Girls. His intention is to use outdoor life to help young people develop their full physical, intellectual, emotional, social, and spiritual potential as individuals. Not only for their personal development, but also to become responsible citizens and members of the local, national, and international communities. A military scout himself, Baden-Powell draws much experience from his own service in the outdoors. He is also inspired by records from backwoodsmen, explorers, and indigenous North American tribes' training methods. Made popular across the British Empire and soon across the world through his 1908 book Scouting for Boys, it soon attracts hundreds of thousands of boys and girls to become scouts, all looking to escape the otherwise rather stuffy and rigid life of a child in the Western world of the early 20th century. The movement grows continuously through the interwar period, attracting youth from various social and religious backgrounds. The adventure of exploring the outdoors is attractive. Also, it means to get away from the parents' guarding eyes and take part in the communal experience of gathering around a campfire, singing songs, and organizing rallies independently. They wear the movement's uniform with pride. They demonstrate their positions in the organization's hierarchy by carrying the badges they can earn to learn special skills and do good deeds. But some parents oppose their children's interest in this movement, especially in the countries touched most directly by the Great War. Despite the good intentions laid out, they fear their offsprings are trained as soldiers. A fear cemented through the uniforms, the merit-based hierarchy, and Baden-Powell's military background. A fear that soon materializes in some places as the fascist and communist movements appropriate Baden-Powell's ideas for their own ideological purposes. It begins in Bolshevik Russia in 1922 when the Communist Party forms the Vladimir Lenin All-Union Pioneer Organization by subsuming the Russian Scout movement. Some scouts had already joined the Bolsheviks during the revolution and formed scout-like organizations that fought for the Red Army. However, most scoutmasters and many scouts joined the White Army, either as regulars or forming youth battalions. On the Bolshevik side, the Russian Union of Communist Youth, later renamed the Komsomol, persistently tries to eliminate the scout movement, which they feel is part of the bourgeois enemy. The Komsomol develops into the Communist Work Organization for youth over 15. The pioneers are to indoctrinate the under-15s in the communist principles. Both organization methods lean on Baden-Powell's idea of extracurricular activities and moral upbringing, with the addition of revolutionary thought and socialist indoctrination. The always ready motto of the Scouts is even transported into a Soviet version in the pioneer slogan. Pioneer in the struggle for the cause of Lenin and Stalin, be prepared, and to really mean the invariable answer to the always prepared. In the 1920s, the 15 to 25-year-old Komsomol members develop into one of the major tools for communist reform in the Soviet Union. They are the foot soldiers of the party, a volunteer workforce to support industrialization, the driving force to collectivize farms, committee organizers, apostles of communist ideology, and spying eyes and ears for the NKVD. For instance, during the Holodomor, the starvation of Ukraine, a large part of the 25,000 volunteers who go into the countryside to carry out Stalin's policy are Komsomol youth. They preach and organize the creation of kolkhoz farms, turn over anyone that refuses to give up their land, and inform the NKVD of anyone hiding foodstuffs for their own needs. The pioneer organization becomes the incubation factories for the future Komsomol recruits. Here, the children under 15 are indoctrinated into true socialists, under the outdoors mantle of fun and games. Over the time, the pioneer and regular school systems are so tightly linked that they become virtually interchangeable. But by the mid-1920s, the Soviet youth organization's militarist aspects of the revolution days are gone for now. That idea will instead resurface somewhere else. Ideologically driven, Scout-inspired movements are now popping up in many places where authoritarians are trying to get a foothold. In Italy, the fascists create the Opera Nazionale Balilla in 1926. The same year, the German Nazi Party aggregates its youth member organizations into the Hitlerjugend, Hitler Youth in short, HJ for boys. The informal sisterhood of the Hitler Youth for girls becomes the Bund Deutscher Mädel, BDM, or League of German Girls in 1930. Boys have to swear an oath to serve the Führer, and in the early days, they go through several tests before being accepted to the movement at 10. Through sporting events and weekly meetings, the children are taught the ideology of the Nazi Party. The boys and girls learn about Germanic mythology and the mythical history of German nation. Sports competitions are meant to raise them into high commitment and achievement in the name of the master race. They are indoctrinated and gaslighted into doctrines and anti-communism, racism, anti-Semitism, and Adolf Hitler's cult. Girls are further educated about the importance of family, blood and nation, and the woman's responsibility to uphold these values. By the end of 1932, just before the Nazis seized power, the Hitlerjugend counts 107,956 boys. The BDM has 19,244 girls. In 1933, Hitler tells the head of the Hitler Youth Organizations, Baldur von Schirach, "Whatever we expect from adult Germany can only come true in the long run if already the younger generations is raised in that sense. That is why the ideological acquisition of the youth is the only guarantee of the realization of our ideological assignment altogether." In June 1933, all other youth movements, including the German Scout movements, are forcefully disbanded. Their members are merged into the HJ and BDM. However, Catholic youth organizations are allowed to coexist for now under the Nazis' Concordat agreement with the Catholic Church. Still, their members and any youth who refuse to fall into the Nazi line becomes targets for severe bullying by the HJ and BDM members. By the end of the year, the HJ counts over 2.3 million members and the BDM close to 250,000. By 1936, they are the only legal youth organizations and count over 5.4 million members. In March 1939, membership becomes obligatory for the German youth between 10 and 18. In effect, 98% of that age group of the population of both genders are now members. The remaining 2% are excluded because they are deemed to be Jewish or considered non-citizens for other reasons. The BDM is divided into two sections. One for younger girls, which resembles a radical scout movement, and one for girls 14 to 18, primed to prepare them to be homemakers and for motherhood. Or as the saying goes, to give the Führer a baby. Because who wouldn't love to do that? With Hitler's constant, unwavering goal to go to war in mind, paramilitary exercises are introduced to the HJ in 1935. Special departments like the Marine Hitler Youth or the Cavalry Hitler Youth prepare boys for serving in specific arms. The risk of dying for the country and the leader's cause is continuously hammered home as an ideal, a development that does not go unnoticed by the Soviet leadership. In the second half of the 30s, the Komsomol and pioneer leaders start implementing a national defense character into the games, field trips and other activities. Discipline is stressed, and the ideal for a young person in the Soviet Union increasingly becomes a cultured socialist soldier. When the Second World War breaks out, these developments go into overdrive. Between September 1939 and spring 1940, 95% of the Hitler's youth male leaders volunteer for service. Shooting and field exercises under war conditions are made compulsory for members aged 16 to 18. The Komsomol organizers begin to recruit youth directly for combat service and increase the organization's cooperation with the Red Army. Paramilitary exercises become obligatory for both girls and boys, in the Komsomol and even for the pioneer children. By mid-1940, these exercises completely dominate the life of the youth movements. The training is now meant to replace parts of the basic military training when joining the Red Army. Children receive modified military titles like Young Private First Class during drills. A year-long competition of military skills for children is announced and draws around 1.5 million participants. During a military-style orienteering event in Moscow in November, one participant is reported to complain. "They sure did pick a path for a march." One of his teammates responds, "Did you want asphalt? In a war, there won't always be asphalt." In Germany, the paramilitary training of HJ members also increases. A 1940 paper on HJ military exercises declares, "The firing practice of the Hitler Youth has to be developed with highest precision, as it is the most important goal to uphold the superiority of the German soldier. Therefore, the Hitler boy must receive a fundamental training to become a good shot before he reaches the age fit for military service." And while the boys keep on training, the girls are given another chance to prove their worth to Hitler's cause. 1,400 female leaders of the BDM are relocated to serve in the newly established Reichsgau-Wartheland in Poland in 1940. They are then instructed to help ethnic Germans settle into their new homes, teach them German customs and the racial ideology. In 1941, Gertrude Fischbacher writes a letter about her service in the village Brody district Jublin. Keenly, the people follow the events of the war and ask us daily where our men are stationed at the moment. So we think that we are on the right path to establish in Brody a real German village community and will continue on this path. When Germany breaks its treaty with the USSR and invades in June 1941, the war is finally at the young pioneer and Komsomol members' doorstep. Many youths burn their membership cards before occupation to escape the Germans and join the partisans when they can. When the Wehrmacht stands at the gates of Moscow, many of them form into an underground militia in preparation for occupation. When in 1942 the German troops are withdrawing from Moscow and in retreat, the Komsomol and pioneers are tasked with removing corpses, shoveling snow, and handling other children who have been orphaned or separated from their parents. Komsomol committees are set up to channel these abandoned children into factory schools and other institutions. The war between the USSR and Germany is not yet a year old. In both countries, a generation of young people has been primed for war already from childhood. So far, most underage members of the youth organizations have only seen service on the home front or behind the front lines. But judging by the situation in Russia during the winter of 1941 and 42, they might very well all be active duty child soldiers before this is over. A few months back, I did an episode about children's evacuation as the war broke out. You can see it right here. For our effort, we depend on the Time Ghost Army. Sign up on Patreon or timeghost.tv. Make sure to subscribe and ring that bell.